Preservation Board for Tuesday, May 5th, Cinco de Mayo, 65th anniversary of America's First Man in Space. Now called to order. Note that we have Mr. Ponarelli, we have Mr. Zapata, and we have Ms. Chelsea McDuffie, and the chairman is myself is Kurt Chakowski. We do have a quorum. Are there any requests to speak cards? And moving on to agenda item 3, receive a report, hold a discussion, take action on approving the minutes from the Historic Preservation Board meeting of April the 21st. Do I have any adjustments, corrections, or items that we need to change? I must say they were very thorough for a person who is not here. Well done. Okay, if not, then I will be glad to accept a motion.
A motion to approve.
Second.
I have a motion from Ms. McDuffie, a second by Mr. Zapata here to approve the minutes. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I would ask unanimous consent of the board members here in ensuring the staff is okay with it, being that we have a huge city meeting starting at 1 o'clock. I would like to move with alacrity, and I believe for Bravo would probably be easier to get through first than the more involved for Alpha. So is there any dissent or any issues? Then with unanimous consent, we'll move on to items for individual consideration. Agenda item 4B, receive a report, hold a discussion, and take action on a request for a certificate of appropriateness for the exterior improvements at 124 West Main. Ms.
Thank
State.
you. I'll go first and then you'll go. Okay. Thank you. Today, we are taking action on a certificate of appropriateness for 124 West Main for exterior improvements. This building is located down on the 100 block on the south side of Main Street. It's where the Railroad Museum used to be, to orient yourself. And so there have been significant facade improvements made over the last several years, including the stairs and the ramp, as well as the storefront windows and doors. However, ownership has changed, and so they are requesting a few more things that will really tie together the look of the building, both the front and the rear, as well as that eastern elevation. 124 West Main was known as the John Hill Building. It was one of Denison's oldest businesses, dating back to 1872. The structure is Italianate and a two-story building that was constructed in 1879. This all comes from Mr. Hander's book on the history of the downtown commercial district. At the time of construction, the design was unique. It left that staircase on the eastern elevation exposed, which is totally uncommon for that time period, and so there were windows that were constructed originally on that side, allowing for sleeping quarters on the second story, kind of like what we have today with lofts on the second floor. The building was used for the Wells Fargo Express Company. Other express companies were located there due to the distance to the railroad. The building underwent several remodels in the latter 1900s, of which one of them bricked in that third window, which would have been on the facade on that second story. There would have been a third window up there, and it still remains that way today. As I mentioned earlier, the other improvements were made more recently, the stairs and the ramp. The building is considered contributing to the district, as is reflected on the Rosin Historic Resources Survey from 2017. It states that it has a fair amount of integrity, so that's subjective, of course, but it is contributing to the district. The application before you is requesting the following improvements. There are quite a few, and they were detailed in the letter of intent. The front elevation, there are three different signage pieces. The graphic on the window above the door, the signboard with a Pearson Group property, and I believe there are some slight modifications to the size of that I'll allow Mr. Kraft to speak to in just a moment. And then the blade sign is reflected as being parallel to the building, but it is a true blade sign, so it will be extended out over the right-of-way. But it will be located at the exact placement that Sam is pointing to on her screen. If you'll look at the rear elevations, that metal cladding will be painted to match the black that will be located or on all of the details of the building. It's a peppercorn. It's a Sherwin-Williams paint, I believe, and that does align with our historic color palette. There is cladding that will be added on that upper story just below the roof line on that east elevation that currently doesn't exist right there. I think this is opinion. I think it looks nice tying it all together, but the board can decide that. But all of those additions will be painted with that black peppercorn, as well as the staircase and the awnings and everything to match. On the facade, the windows will be replaced with a black finish. And Jacob, I'll ask you to speak to that a little bit, if you will, just to explain what exactly you're doing there. And the trim and everything, like I said, will be painted to match. I think I've covered everything that you have there. So at this time, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you much. Are there any
Welcome.
questions of the board of Ms. Tate? If not, we have an applicant raring to go. Sir, if you just state your name and your address for the record.
Jacob Kraft, my address is 1817 Barner Street, McKinney, Texas. So Mary Tate just killed it. That was a lot more information than I had about the project, or the property itself. So just a couple things to highlight, what you were asking about. On the windows, on the front elevation, the top two windows would not change. We would just be painting the trim that's existing there, just so that it matches the bottom. The only two windows that would be replaced are the two bottom windows on the left and the right side of the door. The two windows that sit above those large pane windows are already in place, and those would be painted as well, just to match. And then there's some minor woodworking that needs to be addressed because of water rot and things like that. So that would be addressed, as needed, and then painted to match. On the rear elevation, this rendering came out of Chat. I'm sure you guys have seen that before, but on that top section of trim, it is concrete now. That would be up to y'all if you want to see it this way or just want to see us paint the concrete. I don't think it matters to you guys, Jason. So we're open to suggestions there. Obviously, one costs more than the other, but we're open to suggestions there. But yeah, I don't really have much more to add from what Mary Tate shared, other than just answering whatever questions you have.
Please.
One question I have is, that's a south face with the black on it, and it's gonna get hot. Yeah, and just something to consider over the life of the building.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I think it'll, to your point, it could fade over time if I think about it, and I think that's the lane that you're going down.
Really hot, yeah.
It becomes a maintenance item for the building
Mhm.
and making sure it stays within your standards. So.
Mr. Pearson, I saw you getting motivated there. Is there something you wanted to add? I would ask you to come forward and state your name and address.
Sorry, this is my first time.
No worries. We're all rookies.
I was told that the black shouldn't be a problem with the heat because it's a brick facade back behind there. I don't know if that's true or not. That's kind of why we chose that. I thought the tan is kind of old and dirty and
Mhm.
kind of out of date. So we're just trying to kind of modernize it and make it look pretty, but yet kind of stick to the historical aspects of everything.
Appreciate that. For the record, I need you to say your name and your address, please.
Jason Pearson, 334 Pearson Road, Oxborough, Texas.
Outstanding. Thank you very much. Any other questions for these two gentlemen from the board before I have a couple? The glass that you're going to replace, you know that there's no tinting for the historic section? A personal bugaboo, any chance putting a kick plate in or a bulkhead, which is normally historic, but ask you for the consideration, not going to mandate that. Opinion, I would paint the concrete if it were for me on the, that would be what, the east-facing side there, up there? And first of all, Mr. Pearson, I really appreciate your words and your comments about trying to honor the historic character. That is what we're trying to do here, while still being economically viable, in fact improving by being here in our downtown. So I thank you very, very much. And Ms. Tate, you did say that peppercorn is a match? Okay. Then about the only other thing that I would add is I greatly appreciate the history as a guy that studied this address. It's exactly right. It was conforming back in the original National Registry. It had fallen away by 2013, but because of the by 2013, by 2014, the restoration they did brought it back, so it's again listed as being contributing. So with the intent of your letter, and I'm sure with Mr. Kirk's permitting, it'll maintain that way, and I appreciate that. Any other questions for either of the gentlemen?
I just, opinion-wise, I kind of like the metal cladding on the top myself, so that's,
I do too.
Yeah, I like it as well.
Okay. So there's no dissent here then. All right, thank you very, very much. Any other questions or concerns from the board? Not, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll motion to approve.
Approve the certificate of appropriateness for the
Approve.
exterior improvements.
Yes, approve the certificate of appropriateness for 124 Main Street.
I have a motion from Ms. McDuffie. Is there a second?
Robert.
Mr.
Bob,
Pondarelli
yeah.
gives the second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
It is unanimous aye. Thank you very much, and thank you very much, sirs. Okay, we're moving back to agenda item 4A. This was the tabled item from the 21st of April.
Thank you.
Receive a report, hold a discussion, and take action on a certificate of appropriateness for the addition of an outdoor sidewalk dining in front of 331 West Main Street, case number 2026-012H. Ms. Tate.
Thank you. Okay, so we're bringing this back before you. We tabled it at my request, actually. And so the reason behind that was to make sure that staff was made aware of any safety risks, to consider other alternatives, to make sure that everybody was on the same page from the standpoint of how the streetscape has gone in and what impact that has on outdoor dining areas. The outdoor dining, as we discussed last time, goes before the design committee. They're looking at the placement of tables, as well as the kinds of tables, umbrellas, chairs, planters, all of those things, and then it comes before the Historic Preservation Board for approval on those items as well. If you recall, I don't think we have any issues with the tables and the planters that were presented. We just had some concerns about the safety aspects. So this board will be taking action on the application as it was presented with the items, the tables, the fixtures, the planters that Mr. Sella is requesting. After we tabled that meeting, staff, including myself and Donna and the Public Works Director, as well as some of the D3 contractors and landscape architect, we had a meeting to look at the concerns from a safety standpoint of like the weight of the planters, the placement of the planters, things of that nature. The landscape architect came back, and Sam, if you'll go to those last 4 slides that were placed. Okay. He did give us other options. They are not included at the moment within the design guidelines. And so they are just that. They are options for someone to consider until those guidelines are updated if we so choose to do so. Should the ordinance be changed, that is a council action. They have to give staff that direction to change the ordinance to require certain weight or vehicle rated items. However, I can't I can't give that direction, and they may not be willing to do so due to the cost burden that might be placed on some of our business owners. The planter that was recommended is the first one, thank you, that one, because it is the heaviest. It's 1,500 pounds, but it also runs $1,900 to $2,200 per planter, and that is a significant cost to our business owners. And so that is something that the city needs to really consider. And is there a cost sharing aspect down the road? Potentially, but this is all just to inform you of those conversations and what has taken place since that last meeting. So again, today, if you'll go back to, yep, that one. Yep, that's what Mr. Sella had asked the Historic Preservation Board to approve in terms of the fixtures that he would like to place outside of 34 Chop House, utilizing the sidewalk. And he and I had a discussion about fencing, and the fencing is required per TABC. And so in order to have alcohol behind the fencing. So I would ask that he, once you have your discussion or have any comments, if you could allow him to share what he learned from TABC, just so that we have some of that as well reflected in the minutes.
Okay, outstanding, thank you. From the board, any questions from Ms. Tate, for Ms. Tate?
So I saw one of these slides showed some of the concrete blocks to, prevent traffic from going forward. Are those going to be in there? Or is
Could
it
you
gonna
go
be
to
open?
concept A, B, and C?
So some of it, if we'll just go back slide by slide, I just want to share so that you have an idea of where these are coming from. These images were provided as inspiration, I guess I would say, for the streetscape design. They're in much greater populated places like Miami and some in Europe. So we're not necessarily comparing apples to apples, but you get the idea of why they were used for inspiration. It's the outdoor dining, the placement, showing the paths for pedestrian walkways and things like that. So that's why those were included from the landscape architect. Again, that was another similar one, and that's more similar to the corner. However, there is a slight curb there, so it's a little different. But you do see that on some of those images, it does just go right onto the sidewalk. One thing to note is that there's parallel parking in those places. It's not front parking. So thank you, Sam.
Now, if you could go to concept A, B, and C.
Thank
There
you.
go.
Yeah, because you can see the blocks there, but it's parallel parking. It's not
Yeah,
really
that
headed
is the one that's in front of Blackbird.
parking. Yeah.
That is the one that is on the red brick. It is not on the Heritage Park, white and black. Concepts A and B are only difference in the seating, but that is the one that is in the white and black.
So the two that you're looking at are the top left and the larger image on the right. That would be the configuration outside of 34 Chop House.
And if I might ask you or ask Ms. Dow to come up, why is it that the black and white brick area doesn't have the wheel stops that the others do?
So it is my understanding that that is the design of Heritage Park as a roundabout, and that's once that park is done, you'll be able to see visually what that looks like from the train tracks coming out. But Donna, I was not in those meetings, so that's hearsay on my side.
So we inquired to the project designer about that, and it is to be an open space from Heritage Park over across the street to 34. And as such, it is felt that the curb stops are a tripping hazard. And so that's why they wish not to do that. They wish to have other barriers that would deter cars. None of them will prevent cars from moving forward. It's just to discourage that.
None of the current planned barriers would do that. Because the barrier that you showed and shared with the owner, is that a ASTM F3016 rated?
none of them are.
Because those can rate for a vehicle going 20 miles an hour, a 5,000-pound vehicle, not moving more than 1 foot.
The ACT,
AST and F3016 rated.
correct, but those are not any of the options that were provided. Mhm.
Okay. All right, what other questions do we have for Ms. Tate or?
I had a clarification question.
Sure.
So you mentioned the fencing for TABC.
Yes.
Are the planters meant to replace the fencing, or is it supposed to be both?
No, so the fencing, I'm gonna back up a second.
Sure.
And just, when you think of downtown McKinney, for example, where the fence is, or the outdoor dining is placed up against the building. And so the fence is kind of an extension of the building in that circumstance, and that's to help with the, not just keeping people out of that area, but, no alcohol is permitted beyond this line or whatever it is. So this is a little different situation where we have that space for that pedestrian walkway and the seating is up against the curb rather than against the building. And so it's my understanding that the fence still has to be there to indicate that this is an area for alcohol. It can't be taken outside of this. But I would ask Mr. Sella, he had conversations with TABC this morning to
I was gonna
expand
say-
on that.
My research shows that TABC says that you must fence off alcohol
Correct.
area. That fencing, especially if you go by our design guides, is a movable fence. It's not anchored.
Okay. And so are we proposing both, or are we proposing just fencing, or?
He's going to have both
Okay.
to be able to, or at least the fencing, but he has asked for the planters as well, so,
The
And
planters that he proposes, and I believe are in the design guidelines, are decorative only.
right,
Right.
correct.
And how, do we know how much room that leaves sidewalk-wise for walking and pedestrians? And
6 feet.
So there has to be 6 feet of clearance
Okay.
between all of the fixtures as well as the building to the fencing. So if you look on where Sam is pointing, there's the tree wells and the light wells. That's the light right there. So there has to be 6 feet between that and the seating,
Okay,
and then 6 feet between the building and the seating.
I see.
Yeah, I accept that the design committee says this design meets all the design guidelines and all the requirements of the
Yes.
city in the ordinance as amended to include outdoor dining.
I know, I think I just struggle too as a pedestrian, like you're gonna have to be walking while these, the wait staff's going back and forth across this pedestrian walkway. And, we're talking about trip hazards with the stops, and then you're gonna have people carrying plates and trays of food and drink
Yeah.
across that span of 6 feet.
I would tend to agree with you, but that is the owner's, and that's not a historic preservation board
Yeah.
remit.
Sure.
I did fail to mention, Mr. Sella has to get a license agreement, which requires a certificate of insurance, and that's for any outdoor dining. And he understands that. He acknowledged that, I believe, in his original letter of intent, and he and I spoke about it as well. So, as a business owner, you take that liability on. So he understands that, and you'll have to work through the wait staff issues.
No, as a citizen, I love it. I'd love to have a patio to eat on. Just want to make sure we discussed safety things last time and space for walking and all of that. So just wanted some clarification. Thank you.
Any other questions of staff? Mr. Silva, is there anything you'd like to add here? Please, with your name and your address.
Hi, Nir Stella, 1130 West Bond, Denison. I just think that the big picture is on the right, where the 9 table is, that's the only one that's going to be fenced, and that's where we're going to serve alcohol and food. The right side is going to be more for a waiting area. Even though I'm allowed with TABC to serve alcohol there, they're not recommended because I'm liable to anyone that walk with alcohol and sit on a table. And my insurance won't like it, and it's not something I want to do. and that's it. I think we can do fence that is anchor in, like all this place in McKinney. None of them can be moved.
Yeah, but our design standards cannot anchor the fence.
You won't be able to place it there because of the pavers. And so it won't be able to be anchored into the sidewalk, like
Understood.
permanently.
What about adding some of the poles that we already have on that corners? The city put some poles there.
So that is a question for Ronnie, and he is aware of this conversation and asked that I direct you to him to kind of work through some of the nuances of what that could look like to help accommodate the fencing and things like that.
Okay.
Anything else, Ms. Self?
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Love your place. Remembering that we are only concerned with the historic preservation, the character of our downtown, and we work within the other guidelines from the city, the design guidelines. The issue is fairly clear cut, and we are one of the two. He must go through the design guideline and us before he can do his dining concept. However, not a part of the historic preservation. However, I do want to have on record. Could I have the fire marshal come forward, please? I am guilty of my background, and in my background in the military, we are very, very always concerned about safety. And do you have some statistics about the number of vehicles into storefronts on an average day?
So I don't have those statistics here with
Okay.
me, but I can send them to you later on.
Nope, I got them.
Okay.
Okay, what is your concern about if you have any, about this design with head-in parking without wheel stops and without any barriers to stop vehicles inadvertently going into storefronts and/or outdoor dining?
The life safety of the diners or the occupants of those stores, because they're similar to what I quoted to last time. Whenever we have an assembly occupancy for food and drink, that automatically bumps up or lowers the occupancy load where they're required to sprinkle it. Reason being is because you're not as aware of your surroundings. You're paying attention to your food or your drink or socializing. Same thing in this situation. They're going to be sitting there eating and drinking, and they're going to have cars pulling up around them. They're not going to be aware of a car that puts it in drive instead of reverse, and they won't have any reaction time.
Okay, if I could have you keep there just for a second. The Storefront Safety Council, on behalf of Lloyd's of London in 2022, studied this. And on an average in the United States, there are 100 times per day in the United States of vehicles going into storefronts. That would include anything between the curb and the storefront. 16,000 people are injured each year with vehicles crashing into buildings. As many as 2,600 people are killed each year for that. 46% of the storefront crashes result in injury. Texas A&M Transportation Institute, Karen, I'll give you these numbers afterwards, has found that 18% of all vehicle into building crashes involve restaurants. So if you divide that down, and in the Air Force, especially when we look at mishaps potentially happening in the future, if you do not do anything, in other words, if we just keep things the way that they are, there is in 1 year, a 0.8% chance of a vehicle in front of a storefront without a wheel stop of going into the building. Over 5 years, that becomes 3.9%, one chance in 25. If you have that ASTM rated either planter barrier or the wheel stops, then your risk goes down by 95%. The barriers, as you heard me talk about, take a 5,000-pound vehicle going 20 miles an hour or less, and the barriers will stop something within 1 foot. The chances of a vehicle going into a storefront then now becomes per year 0.8%, 1 in 130. I'm sorry, 0.04%, one in 2,600, and over 5 years, 0.2%, one in 500. I would remind everybody, January 3rd of 2023, we had a vehicle go into Nick's Restaurant in there that sent a person to the hospital. The driver was injured, but was okay. If you sit there and compare it to things, a drowning happens at 0.0013% in 1 year. The probability of being in a traffic accident is 1 in 50 or 2%, so we're between these two. On a risk factor that we would use in the military, the risk factor for not having a wheel stop and or not having a ASTM F30-60 rated barrier planter is rated as very high risk. If you have the wheel stops or you have the barriers, it now becomes low to moderate. So my concern as a citizen in my letter to Mr. Bates is, while the Historic Preservation Board does not address those kinds of things, as a citizen with people eating in a wonderful restaurant, there's a very high risk of someone being hurt. Is there anything you would add to that?
Other than I agree completely with everything you said, because in my role, life safety is the most important thing for the people, the citizens and the visitors that come and visit this place.
Yeah, the only other thing that I would add is being a part of the Main Street Advisory Board, when I worked with Ms. Dow on these design standards, we did not consider vehicles without a wheel stop going into the sidewalks when we set out those standards. Safety was paramount, safety of the pedestrians, but we were talking about a sign falling down on top of them, or we were talking about things happening on the sidewalk itself.
Yeah, this is a completely different,
It is.
something outside of what we planned for.
Okay, before you go, I would remind folks here that we are voting on the historic character of allowing eating outside 34 Chop House, okay? Despite everything that I just said. So with that being the case, thank you, sir. Is there any other comment, any other question? Any other issue that people would like to bring forward? Mr. Selva, is there anything else you would like to add?
I have a small question. So we're talking about only in front of parking spots, correct?
Only in front of the 5 parking spots in front of where you're going to eat, in front of your place and the place next door.
So the 9 tables in the fence are not in questions.
You have,
I know.
there are bollards there. Unfortunately, I don't believe those bollards are safety rated, but they are bollards there. And their chances of a direct shot into that are very, very reduced. Those bollards are essentially to stop a turning vehicle from coming in, sideswiping it there.
Okay, no more question.
Anybody else have anything they'd like to comment on?
From a historical preservation perspective for myself personally, I just feel like it kind of doesn't match what I was kind of hoping for that area right there.
In terms of the modern looking furniture
Yeah,
and stuff?
yes. I mean, just the overall look, a lot of that, I mean, I feel it almost kind of detracts from the character of what we've been used to seeing here.
Yeah, well, I would agree with you. If you look down at Eagle Services and the furniture we approved for down there, this is
Yeah.
it. So we have precedent.
Yeah. Just my opinion.
Okay, no, it's good. It's a good comment. Thank you. Anything else? If not, then I will be willing to accept a motion on case number 2026-012H, agenda item 4A. Is there a motion to approve a certificate of appropriateness?
I motion to approve the certificate of appropriateness for the addition of outdoor sidewalk dining in front of 331 West Main Street.
I have a motion from Ms. McDuffie. Is there a second? So a second from Mr. Petrilli. Any other discussion? Then a vote.
Did you get that?
All those in, is there, now, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
I have 3 ayes and 1 no from me. All right.
Yes.
All righty. Any other staff updates?
We just had one signage approval, administrative approval, and that is for 427 West Main Street where 903 Brewery is going in. Those were window vinyls. They'll have, I anticipate, other signage coming
I would think so.
as well.
It's only been 4 years. Any other actions before this board? If not, I declare us adjourned.